Ladies and gentlemen, the distinguished guests, I'm very honored to be here today and talk about extremely important subjects. It's Bosnia and Herzegovina and sovereignty and foreign policy. But as I was doing the research, it's not just about the Bosnia. So I can say that the case of Bosnia can reflect to all the small states, especially the regional ones. So I would like to begin with a history. Not that I'm just a historian, but I believe that the critical question that we have to ask, what have we learned from the history? And I believe that there are very critical historical lessons that we can take a look that really paint the picture what the Bosnia and Herzegovina, the situation is. So the year was 1772. I will talk about the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. It's a story, it's a short story, which exactly paint the same situation that Bosnia and Herzegovina is right now. So they lasted for almost like over 200 years, and they were operating in a highly multipolar environment, which is exactly the same that we're living in the world today. And the Polish Commonwealth, the dissolution of the Polish Commonwealth, Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth started in 1772. And if we take a look at the environment, they were operating in the highly huge regional powers, which is Russian Empire, Kingdom of Prussia, Habsburg Empire. The Ottomans from the south was pressuring the Europe, and we have Kingdom of Sweden that was also pressuring the Baltics, which is the same region where the Commonwealth was, and the Kingdom of France, they were influencing the balance of power within the Europe. So in this kind of multipolarity, basically paint the picture what the BiH is living today. So I would just tell the story, and you just basically make the correlation, which is basically more or less the same. So in that time, they had a formal sovereignty, which is very interesting. They had a parliament, they have diplomacy, they have the political elites, and they have military potential power, which is mean they're operating as a full state. However, the internal situation was very like BiH today. So which is mean fragmented political authorities, elites competition, weak central power, slow decision making, and foreign influence. These are the all elements that Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth are there. But however, listening to you all this morning, so I can make a direct correlation between that situation. So now the lesson here is that the states can possess formal sovereignty and still gradually lose the capacity of autonomous strategic actions. So this means that we have to start asking questions what we can do for us today. Because over time, the external influence becomes strategic dependence, and then structural dependence eventually becomes strategic paralysis. So we cannot end as a small state in the form of strategic paralysis. So some of your explanation this morning, it just point towards this strategic institutional complexity, which might lead further down to the strategic paralysis. So my argument based on this is very straightforward. BiH has formal sovereignty, but operationally, its foreign policy space remained constrained by both internal fragmentation and external influence. More or less the same over the Balkans region. When I say BiH, I just mean like wider region. So I will talk about three critical points. First, its internal structural framework. The second will be external geopolitical environment. And the third one will be the constraint of strategic decision making point. So the first layer is the structural. So I will not go in details about BiH in internal structural organization, because you already mentioned the extremely important critical points this morning, and you hold the solution. But what I can understood from listening to you all this morning and throughout my research, and especially living in this region and having lots of friends, even working in official on an official state level. So I can say that the solution needs to come from the homework. Yes, it might be a lots of work, but the solution comes from inside. There were great examples. There were great potentials of how the BiH can transform its internal structure so it can start making instead of fragmented or no law for foreign policy, it can go towards straight the structural strategic foreign policy that will protect the state interest. So I believe that if the common driver is found that is beyond nationality, beyond state, beyond ethnicity, that might be a solution. So I don't know what is that. Probably this is a question for $1 million, so I cannot answer this. But I believe that even within this complex internal environment, and especially even more complicated external environments, which neighboring states their own interest, the global power, they're fighting and overlapping their interests. So you have to find the common driver that is specifically for your state. For example, for us from Macedonia, I believe that we still didn't find this common driver. So it's still there, we're still confused, we're still struggling. However, we're still taking a step towards that goes beyond the nationality and beyond the ethnicity. We are not doing a good job, but we're there. So I believe that's kind of analogy that it can be taken. So having said that, it brings me to the second point, which is the external environment, geopolitics. So it's extremely complicated, extremely volatile. I will not go in details for the other elements for my research, but I will take just the European Union as an example. Why? Because I think it's a perfect example how we are struggling because of this influence from external environment that we have. And European Union approach, not just to BiH, just towards the whole Balkan region, is through normative power, right? So the model or the mechanism is conditionality. So you fulfill this reform and then you get what you deserve, right? Basically, yes, we did some good job in Macedonia, but we didn't get what we deserve. Basically, it's kind of contradictory. Now we're entering the field where all these global powers, they start moving out of their own principles just to fulfill their own interest. However, what's happening as a second order effect to us and to our state, we can enter into a state that is called strategic dependency. More or less, more of these political elites in our countries, I can freely say about my country, so I can name with the people and I have this freedom. Why? Because I already work with those political elites. They masterfully use this bureaucratic EU language so they can align with all these elements. But the second order effect is that it weakens the state's institutions. It weakens our goals that we want to achieve, and it weakens our foreign policy. And not just the policy itself, yes, we do have it, but operational activities that we need to take as a state to fulfill those national interests, whatever the national interests are for this, each state is it is very different. So not that I'm saying that looking forward, becoming an EU a member is a long process and maybe it can turn out to a bad thing. No, that's completely different. But if our systems as a state, it's under constant reforms and under constant construction and reconstruction, we cannot know if our actions and if our system that we put in place actually works. So that's why we need to be focused on more coherent diplomatic strategic planning that is really fulfill our national interest. For the sake of the argument, if it means that we have to stop chasing the EU membership for a while, so be it. So I'm all about this, but not to switch the course, but it's to stay, again, on a coherent domestic strategic planning to fulfill strategic national interest. And that's basically coming from the sovereignty, but basically coming from the foreign policy. And all these transformations are coming from that part. The other powers, I'm not going in details, but they are all kind of at the end converging, and their interests are intersect, compete, and occasionally collide in our region, in our states. BiH is not an exemption. But the argument here is not which actor is good or bad. The argument is here, again, what we can do for ourselves. What is that we can move beyond our identity, our ethnicity, and our nationality? Because all these powers, as we can see from the example from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, so they certainly exist for a certain period of time, but the fragmentation and dissolution of this Commonwealth started because of the foreign powers and external influence looking for their interest inside the elite, inside the political system. And when we allowed some external factors to influence our decision-making process in fulfilling our national interests, then we're becoming very much dependable. And my third layer actually is the constrained strategic decision-making. So the domestic actors maintain different political orientation, different strategic priorities, and even different understanding of sovereignty itself. This is kind of, more to say, becoming a standard. Why? Because every single of these political elites are becoming more loud in fulfilling their political interest rather their unified strategy. And this why we cannot identify what is the course of action of our foreign policy sometimes. So, having said that, this can create long-term strategic consequences. So we can permanently remain reactive or just chasing what's happening around us. The second can be excessive dependence on external mediation. You're the best example, so we can learn from you. So how is it to function even internally and externally if you have an external mediation? And also the third point, we can be further deepening this fragmentation because of this. We fully open the door for external influence. So with this, I would like to conclude my short overview of my research, and then you can read more in the article before. Therefore, the challenges for us is facing, it is not simple diplomatic alignment, but it is a strategic consolidation. So that's a critical word. So we have to consolidate on a multiple level and the multiple layers. Yes, sometimes can be extremely uncomfortable, but we're living in a state that we have to move forward. We have to look for a prosperity. Why? Because if we start chasing the consequences of the external powers or great powers shaping the security and political environment around us, we might leave with nothing, just bits and pieces that is leftovers. So that's not the food for keeping our national interests forward. That's not the food for prospering the national interest. So having said that, it depends whether we, including BiH, can transform formal sovereignty into the operational strategic capacity. Because in geopolitics, sovereignty is not measured only in recognition. It is measured by the ability to make and sustain strategic choices under pressure. We like to live in a comfort zone, and most of our political elites, they live in a comfort zone. However, the time that we're living in, and you already know that we're living in the time of narratives, that one tweet and one statement can change the whole course of action. So we have to work and we have to protect our state interest outside of our comfort zone, and we cannot stay and we still think that as the propaganda was before, that we have to integrate all our societies in one space and there will be no wars and there will be nothing. So it's proven with time that this is not the case. That's why we have to be prepared to work under pressure. With this, I'd like to conclude my presentation, and I'm looking for your questions. Thank you so much.